me.
It's fine. It's fine. I fully understand. How's everyone doing this morning? Good. I'm Councilman Corey Branch. I am the chair of our Safe, Vibrant, and Healthy Communities Committee. Glad to have you, Mayor, Councilman Jones, Councilman Silver. This is our first meeting that we've had this year. We have 2 items on the agenda. But we're going to start off talking about our commercial residential use conflicts of interest that we're having. And here we're going to have some presentations from our staff. Before we start, my first question is, how many people are here who are wanting to speak or wish to speak? To give me an idea. I see 1. Is there another? I see 3. Okay. So I have 3. I'm sure others may go up, but as of right now, I have 3 hands that identify who may be wishing to speak. But first, we'll have our presentation from staff. I'll hand it over to our Assistant City Manager.
Thank you. Ryan Bergman. So for the first item today, the commercial and residential use conflicts, we'll have a presentation that does try to provide some of the data that we have from Pat Young from Planning and Whitney Schoenfeld from Special Events. On top of that, we also have representatives here from RPD, and Chief Boyce is available to come up either after the presentation or to answer questions or both, and he has his team here as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Pat.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Pat Young with Planning and Development. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Chair Branch. As you heard from ACM Bergman during the March 18th and May 13th council meetings, this committee was referred an item kind of around challenges to mixed-use development, including noise disturbances from bar patrons and other issues arising from the intersection of vibrant nightlife and residential neighborhoods. And so my goal is to very briefly go over some data and maps that we compiled based on data we received from our partners in the police department and special events. So this is, of course, as you're very familiar, the city's planning jurisdiction. So as you'll also recall, the noise ordinance was adopted in February 2024. There were some minor refinements made later that year, but the timeline showed here closely tracks with the new noise ordinance, and so there's been almost 10,000 noise complaints during about a 1.5-year time frame. You can see that they are broadly dispersed across the city, and for a very wide variety of reasons. But they are concentrated. The largest concentration is near what was formerly known as the Glenwood South Hospitality District. The map, when you see this map, that's what that represents, and I'll call it out as Glenwood South going forward. You'll recall that just for context, the Hospitality District Entertainment Permit and the Amplified Entertainment Permit was repealed, replaced by the Nightlife Permit in February 2024. So 641 of those 9,900 plus noise complaints are from this area. You can see the heat map showing the largest number. That constellation of bars there near Peace Street in Glenwood.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question?
Please.
Could you go back to the other heat map? I'm just curious what the other heated, okay, so North Hills, and then what's the one down south at the Beltline? Is that Coastal Credit?
No.
That's not where that is.
That looks more near Dick's.
We'd have to follow up with you, Mayor, to find out, where those are. We do have every noise complaint, right? So we can go into that data, but we haven't had time to.
Okay, yeah, I mean, just for, curiosity's sake, and that's pretty far up there, right? Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure thing. So this map shows the nightlife establishment permits. There's 82 of those in green, and that's overlaid with the noise complaints, which are in red, right? So I think this map shows, and this is kind of staff's assessment, there is not a close correlation with nightlife and noise complaints, except in Glenwood South, right? So you all can draw your own conclusion there, but there wasn't an especially abundant number immediately adjacent or near those, except in one or two instances outside of Glenwood South. So again, it's just for your edification, we can go deeper into this data, but it seems like there might be some, operators that are frequently in violation rather than something that's systematically problematic with the nightlife use.
So, quick question.
That's a conclusion staff has made. You can reach your own conclusions.
In the data, and because we don't have any background for this on the agenda, but do we have an understanding of the type of complaints for these reds that are sporadic across the city?
Sure. So I'll let my colleagues in police talk about that in detail. It runs the gamut.
Okay.
So police are the ones that are responsible for issuing every single one of these red dots is a PD officer responding to a complaint.
You have a question?
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, I understand that nightlife permits could be a primary reason, but there are also other permits given, I'm sure, for like, just across the street from me, they're now increasingly doing outdoor bands, middle of the day. What is that kind of permit called? And is there, I'm just trying to think if there's a way to find better correlations by adding other categories of permitted noise.
Sure. So that there are a number of venues that operate music as an accessory use. So if they don't qualify as a nightlife establishment, which means they don't operate after 11 o'clock and they don't meet other criteria that Whitney or others could speak to, then and the use is subordinate to a primary use like a bar or restaurant, then it's considered an accessory use and no additional permitting is necessary. They're just required to comply with the noise ordinance and any other applicable regulatory standards. But we don't regulate the kind of music you're describing currently, something certainly we can consider. Okay. So yeah, it's the largest concentration of nightlife establishment permits is here in Glenwood South, as you might expect. I'll turn it over to Whitney to talk a little bit about how we're getting feedback from residents and businesses on noise.
Good morning. Once again, I'm Whitney Schoenfeld with the Office of Special Events. I'm here to give you guys some background on our noise feedback form and how that is used, and then how enforcement at nightlife establishments is handled as well. So to give some quick background on a nightlife permit, and Pat just kind of touched on this as well, but a nightlife permit is required for any establishment that serves food and/or drinks, allows alcohol consumption, and offers live or recorded entertainment after 11 p.m., and also meets a certain assembly type within fire code. So this map here plots the nightlife permits that we have throughout the city. Our office manages the noise feedback form, which is found on our website. It is specific to nightlife venues. It's not necessarily a noise feedback form for pickleball, basketball, someone's dog is barking, anything like that. It is specific to nightlife venues here. This form did exist previously as well in a different variation when the amplified entertainment permit and the hospitality district entertainment permit were in place. So we just revamped it when the new noise ordinance and the nightlife permit went into effect. One of the requirements of the nightlife permit is that all establishments have to provide manager contact information, and that is published here on our noise feedback form. So residents can choose to submit feedback to our office, which RPD also has access to this form, or if they feel comfortable doing so, they can reach directly out to the venue to mitigate any issues directly with them as well. We have several notifications on this form that this does not trigger a police response. If someone wants an immediate response and it's a non-life-threatening emergency, we encourage them to call the non-emergency line. But again, this form does not trigger a police response. It's to gather information to reach directly out to the venue or to submit feedback to us if you don't necessarily want to call the police. While our office is, yes?
I'm sorry. Once you receive that form, is there a contact with that from your office with those people who submit it, or do they just submit it just for you to keep track of?
If they provide their contact information, there's a question that says, do you want to be followed up with? If they provide contact information, then staff in our office will follow up with the resident We'll also follow up with the business. We also work with RPD on any notable concerns or trends that we're noticing in the responses that we receive.
And then, I'm sorry, my last question is, how do residents that don't necessarily contact us, or how do they know about that form? How are they informed of that?
So we did a lot of education when we did the listening sessions for the new noise ordinance and the nightlife permit. It's also posted on our website. We maintain contact with a lot of the residents that are here today and share that as well.
Because that's was specifically for Glenwood South. I know that my residents are in 5 Points, so they may not have necessarily been part of that.
So it is for all nightlife venues. Obviously, there is a larger concentration within Glenwood South, but the map plots any nightlife venue throughout the entire city.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. While our office handles all of the issuance of the permits for nightlife permits, we don't do so in a silo. We work with RPD, building and fire. Once a venue has passed all necessary inspections is when we're issuing that nightlife permit, and RPD does the enforcement. So if there are issues with violations or issuing citations, that is all coming from the police department. And I will hand it back over to planning and development.
Thanks, Whitney. My colleague Justin Booker shared some additional information to the mayor's earlier question about some of these secondary areas. So if you all would indulge me, I'll quickly. So the second, can you see my cursor on this? Yes, you can. So this, the second, third, and fourth area are this Millbrook Manor Circle. There's a wedding venue, events venue that gets a lot of calls over there. The second is Fayetteville Street, Hargett Street, it's bars and restaurants. And then the third is Carolina Pines Avenue. This is one resident who's called on a neighbor over 100 times.
Okay.
I think it's a great example of the diversity of type of calls. I'll certainly let PD speak to that in greater detail. All right. You all asked for more information specifically about sanitation-related complaints. The attorney's office.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Before we move on to sanitation, can
Sure.
I ask, can we go through or be provided the nightlife permit? What are the requirements of the permit? What does that mean?
Yes, so again, for the nightlife permit requirements, it's an establishment that serves food or drinks, allows alcohol consumption, offers live or recorded entertainment after 11 p.m., and falls under a specific assembly type in fire code.
So there are no stipulations on sound, like how loud it can be within this requirement. You're not giving them like, here's some soundproof barriers. That's not part of that.
No, all sound and noise is now regulated through the noise ordinance and not the nightlife permit. So the nightlife permit is making sure that these establishments are operating in a safe way. One of the things that is inspected is making sure that all venues who operate as a nightlife establishment have what's called an emergency shunt trip breaker. That's a red button that turns off all the lights and sound if there was an emergency. So it's really just about the safe operation of the venue, and the noise, the sound is managed through the noise ordinance, not the nightlife permit.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So the attorney's office has more information about you all's options in terms of managing these sanitation-related complaints. This would be, of course, primarily late-night complaints, although we didn't have that data available in terms of the timing. We saw 13 complaints. There was one in Glenwood South. So we couldn't validate without more research the location of those. There was one we could validate as a single-family house. So the attorney will speak more about you all's options in terms of controlling or managing late-night garbage collection. This would be from private haulers. The city does not collect garbage at late-night hours or early morning hours before 6 or 7 a.m. I'm not sure if anyone in the room knows exactly how early our folks do. So most of our downtown area, including certainly the vast majority of the Glenwood South area, this map shows that better. I think that's any of the purple, including light purple, is mixed-use zoning, right? So that's been in place since 2013. This was a very intentional strategy to concentrate a majority of our new growth in activity centers that can move more, that can more readily support growth. And there is a slightly higher concentration of noise complaints in mixed-use areas than there are outside of mixed-use areas. but the mixed-use districts, of course, there are residential only or primarily residential districts near these mixed-use districts. So again, this is where you see some of these conflicts. The green are the residential zoning districts. This is the history here. Councilmember Silver, of course, was a great leader on what was an incredibly progressive and impactful and valuable and successful policy to get mixed-use zoning in place so that we could have growth that was more transit supportive, more cost-effective, and created connectivity, cohesion, and economic benefits. And I think that has worked out, right? Well over 65% of our growth have been in these activity centers where the mixed-use zoning exists. So I think, and then kind of a last comment here before I turn it over back to Whitney to conclude on the sociable cities assessment. Two insights on noise. We, of course, have 5 senses, but noise tolerance, the word annoyance is used there. I don't prefer that. I would say tolerance is subjective, highly subjective. If I put your hand on a stove, 100% of you would scream, but if I dropped a book, only about a quarter or half of people would be annoyed or irritated by that. So that makes it challenging to regulate and manage noise. And then there's been data, significant data, primarily through the Federal Aviation Administration and pertains to airport noise, that shows that people's intolerance of noise is increasing significantly. The people are about twice as intolerant of ambient noise as they were 20 years ago. So these are just considerations as you contemplate and investigate this topic further. So with that, I'll turn it over to Whitney to talk about the sociable cities assessment, which gets directly at this issue.
Whitney Schoenfeld again with the Office of Special Events. Earlier this month, you all were present at the council meeting where the Sociable City Assessment report was presented. The following day, we also invited all stakeholders and the public to participate in a kind of a rinse and repeat of that with another presentation of the findings. Some of the residents here attended that as well, where they could hear the report firsthand from the consultant and ask any questions. So some of the takeaways from that, residents really appreciated potentially revisiting how noise is, how we enforce the noise ordinance, and having it be a separate entity than just the police department. Obviously, the police department has a lot of priorities out at night, so if there is another entity that could handle enforcement, the residents seem to appreciate that. They were also looking forward to continuing learning best practices from other cities by way of learning from our consultants and whatnot. We mentioned that we still have connections with them as well as other cities to learn what works and what doesn't in other cities. Staff in our office attended a conference just earlier this month, and we asked a lot of them about outdoor bars and outdoor venues and how you're handling that. And it seems to be a unique problem to Raleigh. There's a couple other cities that have outdoor bars, but the large majority of them do not have outdoor establishments.
Whitney, what were the other cities? Because I have a comment I'm going to make in general about just building construction material, but what other cities did you benchmark?
Yeah, so the folks that we've met with are Pittsburgh, San Francisco, New York City, Sacramento, Nashville, Austin, Seattle. Those are the ones that are coming to mind as of right now.
Yep. I'll just make this, I'm sorry, to the chair, may I?
Go ahead.
Back when we envisioned mixed-use district, a concern of mine was stick-built versus concrete construction. Some of the cities you mentioned have different building material standards. When you go to stick-built, which basically are just open studs, and you don't have non-insulated windows, you're going to hear the noise. Somebody will sneeze on the sidewalk, and you're on the 3rd floor, and you have to say, God bless you. That's the evolution. When we talked about changing the building material, that's something that we cannot mandate. North Carolina has building code, but when you start going to mixed use and you can use stick-built, it's going to be different in cities that use masonry construction and insulated windows. It starts to protect you from the sound. So this is something that's probably off the table, but looking forward, it's going to be hard to look at older single-family residences or stick-built. These are 6 stories built very differently than masonry because they tend to absorb the sound. Insulated windows, I suspect, most of the complaints are going to be by those that are not masonry buildings with insulated windows. So that's something that's going to be out of our control, but for awareness going forward is something we should certainly pay attention to.
Absolutely. And we've had initial conversations with staff in planning and development in the attorney's office to figure out what we have the authority to do and what we don't as well. So that's.
Yeah, and the building code directly related to the fire code, because at the time the fire chief was also expressing concern about stick-built versus masonry, but that's a whole other conversation. Since that is handled by the state, there's very little power we have, but it was something that when we started looking at mixed use, kind of anticipated that this may be an emerging issue. So it's just something to put out there so that people are aware as we evolve these mixed-use districts. If we can communicate, it would be appreciated if we start exploring better soundproofing of buildings, but that had cost, and that cost will be passed on to the homeowners and renters, so that's something else that we have to be mindful of.
Madam Mayor.
Yep. Well, and I think, to me, the cost would be passed on to the consumers of the bars, and so you could consider, right, should there be permits in stick-built or, you know, units, and what's happening, and again, I'm referencing something on South Street right across from my street. It's pretty classic, right? Small building, just like a lot of the ones on Glenwood South. There's not really that much room inside, so this one is a concrete structure. And then they've decided to build an outdoor patio, stage, and are trying to build an event business by having live music now multiple times a week. I mean, it could or could not be good, you know, but just this whole, but going back to your point, I find it hard to believe that Raleigh is one of the only places that has this much outdoor music. You would think all the towns like Charleston, Savannah, you know, cities would have this problem, or maybe we are just unique in that we've allowed so many nightlife permits to be given to institutions that don't actually have a structure that they're operating in.
Well, I'm gonna let staff continue, but I think also for me, I think it's about level of expectations. When you go to a Charleston or Savannah, you kind of think entertainment. And I think some of our residents may not consider Raleigh as an entertainment. We're still growing into our cityism, if I can create a word. So I think that's one of the conflicts that we're having as a growing city, and the way we also have people from all across the world moving here with different expectations, different wants, and I'm not gonna say needs, because I think all our needs are met, but a lot of different wants. So I think that's where we're really having these conflicts as we grow up into us being a city and things of that nature. So Councilman Jones.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that, I guess the question I have as we're talking about stick-built versus the masonry, which is already done, so I can't change the way that the building was built, are there other opportunities or mechanisms that we can do retroactively after this is built to help mitigate that sound? Are those options in other cities? Or is it strictly they built it before, you know, they did masonry and now they don't have that problem, so they don't have to think of alternate solutions?
Yeah, backing on again with planning and development, we've got no means to require them to retrofit or anything like that. We could do a grant program or some kind of incentives to put in acoustic baffling or other things of that nature, but no means, regulatory means. I do want to take a moment to, I think, just validate what Councilmember Branch has said, that we have a geographically small downtown for a 500,000 person city. It's ringed by low-density single-family neighborhoods completely, and those neighborhoods significantly predate the level of activity, mixed use, and nightlife and vibrancy that we have. So it's really about expectations. I think that probably largely explains a lot of the variance that Whitney observed from the Social City report. So I just wanted to put an exclamation point on that, and the fact that we don't have local control over building codes to directly mitigate this. There is a tool within the state building code that's not been ever used, to my knowledge, where we could seek an alternative code that we're investigating and assessing whether that's possible, and we certainly would want to get direction from you all whether it's warranted. It definitely would add cost. We get a lot of commentary that we don't quite meet the economic thresholds to be doing concrete and steel buildings in a lot of these locations. So that would be a real challenge, but we could continue to investigate it.
Okay.
I'll just touch on a couple other points on here. So we are working to identify quick wins out of the report. Obviously, we're hearing some things that would be unfeasible or challenging for us to implement, but we are trying to find that low-hanging fruit that we can do. So we've already scheduled meetings with staff in various departments, partner agencies, including the DRA, about some smaller quick wins that we can achieve. So we will continue to do that. And obviously, we are open to any priorities or direction from this committee or council based on your review of the report as well.
Okay. So I have a question here, and it's probably geared towards engineering services. It's about staffing. Do we have like a sound engineer within the city of Raleigh? And my reason for asking this, because this could be someone that can not only help from our venue and policies and helping come up with solutions and ideas, but they can also help us with our own facilities that the city operates, but also as people come into the city, it's almost like your in-house expert. So I think I'm phoning a friend from our other assistant city manager. Is that something we have or considered?
Council member, we do not. We rely on consultant services for those. We have some resources on call, but we do not have anyone internal.
Okay, but you said we have consultants that we can bring in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just an idea, something maybe we can think about as we're a growing city. That may be an expertise to have on as a resource for all of our departments as we're building new parks, we're building new facilities within, these parts across the city, making sure that as a city we do our part, but also I think as a resource to engineering and our police department when they're going out and they're trying to figure out, okay, what do we have, having someone on staff that may be a food for thought, something to consider. Because sound waves operate differently depending on how they bounce off materials. I think that's what Councilman Silver was mentioning, masonry. But also with masonry, you have to be careful because if it's too close, it'll magnify it. So those are some things to consider. Councilwoman Jones.
Thank you so much. I feel, just for discussion purposes, that a lot of the complaints that I'm hearing are due to outdoor sound, that it's the outdoor entertainment. And so when I'm looking through that, I also saw and I might get it wrong, with the 38 that were concentrated within Glenwood South, that do those come up for renewal? Like, that feels like that's our choice to be able to say, actually, maybe outdoor noise is not okay here. And if we've already approved it, and let's say in these 38, do they come up for renewal at some point, or is that like in perpetuity from now on they can be outdoor?
So the nightlife permits are on an annual basis. So the permits run from July 1 to June 30th. But again, the nightlife permit isn't addressing sound. So if they are having outdoor sound that is not reasonable based on the reasonable person standard, that would be a violation of the noise ordinance and not necessarily their nightlife permit. So even if someone has a nightlife permit, yes, they can play sound after 11 p.m. and operate, but they should still be abiding by the noise ordinance.
So basically, if we wanted the council person club and we were closing at 11 p.m., we could still have an outdoor venue that produced music up until 11. So the nightlife permit is for 11 p.m. on, is that correct?
Correct. If a business closes at 11 p.m., they do not need a nightlife permit, but they should still be abiding by the noise ordinance throughout the day when they are operating.
Correct, okay.
If, as Councilmember Jones is saying, if the outdoor music, and you have to clarify, is it coming from indoor venues or music from outdoor events? I guess what we're saying is that, is there a way, even though we have the nightlife permit and then a noise ordinance, that we can add greater scrutiny to the outdoor amplified music if that is the problem? And that is, I think, what we're trying to get to. Is the outdoor amplified music the main source of complaints, or is it vibration coming from venues that are playing music indoors, or is it both?
I think it's both.
It's both.
And I think we
Okay.
can, yeah.
Continue.
At least, because I think a lot of the complaints that we're receiving are from venues from indoor, and then they open their doors and it goes out.
Okay.
So, you know, when I read the Sociable City study, it said a paradigm shift is required. So it's good to get level set on what we're doing now. But as I read that, you know, they were suggesting that we go to a noise decibel, that we hire experts in noise, to Counselor Branch's point, that we do a one-off for all of these venues, that we move this out of the police department, we have professional team, a nightlife manager. Like, everything in that report resonated to me that is the right report, that's the right approach. But I guess I'm not clear with this committee. Is the city management going to come forth with proposals out of that study, which was a lot? I mean, that study was a lot. So, you know, I've submitted a lot of questions, but I guess that, you know, just deferring to the chair here, you know, is staff going to come forward at this meeting with some proposals, or is this like we're having to ask for those proposals, or I just...
So I know at the last meeting, I think I asked for some quick wins or some things we can do. So I think you have more in your presentation, or is that it?
I can highlight some of the quick wins. It's only been about a week and a half, but we've met with parking staff thus far about doing some education about some of the loading zones that are mentioned in that, and talking about private parking lots, and again, what we have the authority to do and what we don't. So while we may not be able to require security in private parking lots, maybe there's something we can talk about with lighting, but again, we're in preliminary conversations again about what we can and cannot do. We've also met with or talked with the DRA again about getting introduced to new businesses so we can highlight the services that the city offers, the permits that we have, so people have the proper permits before they are operating. And other than those, we have scheduled meetings with staff in other departments. Our Nightlife Steering Committee, which is an internal group of city staff over 8 different departments, we're meeting next week to review, again, the report with them as well, and again, figure out what those quick wins are that we can't do. That's what we've done.
Yeah, so for me, I would like to give staff some time to really look at that report, because we all just received it. And like you said, you had questions. Sure, other council members have also sent questions concerning that report. So I think it's feasible to give you all the runway to look in the report, see what you can pull out. I think coming out of this meeting, any other ideas or suggestions that we can add can be part of your conversation as you're moving forward, and things of that nature. So Councilwoman Harris. Jones, I'm sorry.
That's okay. If I could ask that as you're contemplating, because I know a lot of that is with Glenwood South, and specifically with parking, there's a lot of parking in downtown as an option. But when in my district in 5 Points, there are no options for parking down there. And so I'd ask that you add that into the conversation. I mean, we already have no parking requirements, so as we add businesses there, they're ending up parking in neighborhoods. And I get videos and I get message of seeing all the people who are parking in the neighborhoods disrupting neighborhood sleep. And so for me, I'm like, okay, quality of life of my neighbors, of my residents is really crucial here. That may not be the same experience in downtown. You know, so I just ask that you incorporate that into your discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even our consultant had shared that while the scope of the study was specific to Glenwood South and Fayetteville Street districts, some of the takeaways and recommended actions could be applied citywide.
Okay. Thank you. I'll let you continue this. Are you done?
I am done.
You're done?
Yes.
All right. And the only reason I'm asking because we don't have a copy of you all's presentation like we normally do, so I couldn't tell when it was near the end. What I want to do now is give those who asked to speak a chance to come up and speak. I had 3 hands. Is it still 3? So I had a gentleman here, lady here, and is that green and white? Glasses? Green and blue? Green and blue. Green and blue? Yes. So, and then in the back. So if y'all can come up, please state your name and give everyone 3 minutes.
My name is Greg Morris. I live at 5 Points, 1902 Fairview. Last time I came to City Council over 25 years ago and started talking about bar issues, our neighborhood got sued by 5 Points Pub and Billiards. And it was the same issue that we're having now. So and I've lived in Raleigh 50 years. I've been in my house for 34 years, and where quality of life has been disrupted. I've had 25 good years. So our houses are very close to the establishments on Glenwood. My neighbor is 210 feet away. I'm 240 feet, and that's from my front porch. That's not from my property line. So the problem is destination nightclubs and bars with live amplified music and outdoor patios with no parking that are allowed to be permitted in a neighborhood business area surrounded by residential district. And the bar properties also adjoin Underwood Elementary School, which is taking the brunt of a lot of the litter and late night raucous. So late night, loud bass music, noise, loitering, drugs, traffic, littering, urinating, vomiting, and more in front of our homes and the elementary school is a consequence of this. We had no notice that these establishments were opening to the direct negative impact of our neighborhood. This continues to be allowed to happen by the city. Here I am 25 years later, and last time it was Superior Court. We ended up with Charles Meeker representing us, but we don't want to go there again. We have very little enforcement of the no parking after midnight zones that were put in place 25 years ago, or to patrol the late night loitering at the cars. The police do their best. However, response is extremely variable. Try listening to a thumping bass sound for 4 to 5 hours every night, Wednesday through Sunday, and then decide a police comes out and says that's not unreasonable noise. So the noise ordinance is very variable. Some good recommendations in the Sociable City study, and I read it cover to cover. The 311 phone line to register and track noise complaints would be especially beneficial, and especially the type that come in. Late night loitering ordinance might be helpful. So people, they party and then they come party at their car for another 30, 40 minutes before they go home. Parking enforcement, look at the location before permitting these establishments. One size approach doesn't fit all in Raleigh, and that's been the problem. Educate the police to new ordinance changes. We had police come out that still were, you have to get someone to do a decibel reading. They didn't know that it had changed in January. So I think that's important. And do not allow late night bar patios next to residential homes. Keep sound contained. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I guess it's afternoon. I'm Angela Floyd. I live on the Paramount in Glenwood South. We have lived there for 10 years. And so we live in a condo. And I just want to say, and I know that most of you know this, but for Councilman Silver, there are, and you probably know, there are lots of condos downtown Glenwood South. There are older homes in the perimeter that are stick-built, but, condos are concrete built. We have steel frame, it's concrete, and we're still being assaulted with the noise. I was extremely excited about the study and about getting an expert, a third party. I've never thought the police needed to be saddled with this issue. So I'm very happy about that. I do think that you want to think about, for us, we don't use the form because we want to go to sleep. So we call 911, which we've been told that is what we also do. But because we want the police officers to visit, and we've experienced the same thing that the gentleman before me said, where they're saying, I was told even that it was loud, but that we're no longer really enforcing the noise ordinance. They didn't say that. I'm saying that because nothing happened. It was loud and unreasonable, but they are mediating now and not following the noise ordinance, which is to issue citations. So I think that what might be helpful, and I haven't asked for data most recently, is to look at the number of complaints and to look at the number of citations. And I think that will tell the story. There are no citations being issued. So I'll just finish in saying that when I think about a third party, I think it's wonderful that you'd have an expert for decibel readings. But at some point there will have to be enforcement. If I'm calling that night because it is completely unreasonable, the expert comes out, And I imagine that is not going to be the same person dealing with the bar owners and the managers of those bars and issuing citations. So that'll be another piece of that we'll want to think through. But I thank you for this, and really am excited to see some new options put forward, because we've been dealing with this off and on for 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cindy Holmes, 3952 Stag's Leap Circle. I'm the president of the Vineyards at Bentley Ridge. It's HOA. Our community is located at the corner of Blue Ridge Road and Ed Drive. When our community was built 20 years ago, there were fields behind us. Now we have medical office buildings behind us. We have about 6 dumpsters behind us. Our issue isn't right now the entertainment. We're going to probably get to that with you as the Lenovo Center property since it's been rezoned, as you have your amplified music on that property. Right now, I'm just here for the dumpster noise. Officer Taylor, I believe, I don't know if he's here, but he's been out. We have dumpsters. Those dumpsters for the medical office buildings are emptied anytime between 3 in the morning and 7 in the morning, 3 days a week. I'll be happy to send you videos so you can listen to it yourself in the middle of the night. What's so ironic is that the Rex has their sleep study building, their building that does sleep studies, is in one of those buildings where we're disturbed all night with the dumpster noise. We've tried to bring this up since 2019. We've been bringing it up in a collaborative way, because we're a collaborative community, with the project managers or the community managers for the medical office buildings. They turn over fairly frequently in those buildings. We've also tried to deal with GFL, because it's the GFL employees that are coming out. Maybe they're trying to get their route done. Those employees turn over fairly regularly. So we have brought it up. I brought it up to Christina. I brought it up to the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance, which is now the West Raleigh Alliance. City staff have been out there. Police officers have come out there. I don't believe we're in your results. But you need to stop letting them empty the dumpsters in the middle of the night. This isn't, if you want to have mixed use, if you want office buildings behind our homes, that's fine. But we shouldn't have to be awake all night long. And then the nights that they don't come, we're awake anyway, because we've been disturbed for the last 4 nights. So I don't know how you want to change your collection, whether you want to go to you only can collect the trash between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m., or however you want to deal with it. But I'm here, and there are 5 Bentley Ridge communities that are disturbed. You have the Brookstone, Bentley Ridge of the Brookstones, then you have Bentley Ridge proper, you have the Oaks, which is on both sides of Ed Drive, you have the Vineyards, and you have Old Town. Old Town, I believe, has complained to you as well, because the Wake Internal Medicine office building, they're getting their dumpsters serviced in the middle of the night as well. So the folks that are at Old Town are being awakened. Thank you. It's been great to be here.
All right, thank you. I know we have our chief and other law enforcement. I'm gonna give you a chance to come up and speak to the social part, but as well as any other items that you all have been addressing or trying to address.
Yes, good morning, Mayor, council members. Rico Boyce, Chief of Police. First of all, I'm extremely honored to be the Chief of Police and deal with some of the issues that have been brought up today. I will say, when I took over as chief March 1st, I started doing an evaluation of downtown and what our current structure looks like in the downtown district, more specifically our hospitality district. Shortly thereafter, after talking with our command staff, we made some internal reorg changes, mainly with our hospitality units. At the time, Captain Van Antwerp was the downtown district captain. We utilized his experience, and we moved him over to now the new hospitality district captain. From there, we placed a second captain in this downtown district, Captain Nordstrom, and he is over the rest of the downtown district. By making that move, now we can be more responsive and proactive in addressing some of the issues that are going on in our central business district, Glenwood South, Fayetteville Street, the Transit Mall, and Moore Square. We also able to streamline our response to some of the concerns that you heard tonight, more specifically the noise. We get a lot of noise violations on a Friday, Saturday night, in addition to what we're dealing with already with just Glenwood South in itself and our traffic detour plan, as well as the calls for service. My priority as the chief is to make sure that this city is a safe city. The resources that I've allocated downtown has proven we're moving in the right direction to keep this a safe city, a safe area. We recovered quite a bit of firearms in this area. We've arrested a lot of folks that probably had some intentions to do some harm to people in this area. So I appreciate the work that we've done, and I recognize and acknowledge we still have to do better. Some of the comments that the residents talked about today, I'm take ownership of it, far as my folks not being, not sharing the proper information far as enforcement with the noise ordinance. The way I'm going to address that in our in-service training and our roll calls, I'm going to make sure that they are familiar with the noise ordinance and how to enforce that. From what I've seen, some of the complaints that I've received is, you know, one officer would come and say one thing and another officer would say something completely different on the same type of call. So there's no consistency there amongst my department. I own that. I'm going to fix that through education in our in-service training as well as roll calls. I will say some of the recommendations that came out of the report, I support that. I look forward to working with other city departments to maybe coming up with a better approach in how we address noise here in our city. I do believe there's some room for improvement, and I'm willing to come to the table and offer my experience or my feedback on what it should look like. I do have members of my team that can probably go into more detail about the concerns that have been brought up today in regards to noise. I will start off with Captain Van Antwerp. Unless Councilmember Jones, do you have a question of me? No? Okay.
Sorry.
I do have a question of you before the captain comes up. So you have your hospitality committee that's been kind of focused on downtown. Some of the areas that we're having issues are not downtown within that area. What are some thoughts, especially when we think about the 5 Points area near Glenwood?
Exactly. And Captain Van Antwerp knows about that area specifically because we got quite a bit of complaints from that 5 Points area. But let me go back. You remember it was a slide that showed all the citywide noise violations. Those include, and the young lady just talked about it, we're getting a lot of noise violations about dumpsters in the middle of the night. We've had conversations with GFL and asked that they do not pick up or empty trash at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. We've made multiple calls to that company specifically to try to alleviate that and try to get some voluntary compliance. I know the crowd here, the citizens here are probably like, okay, it's time for some enforcement. And I recognize that. I recognize that it's time to escalate some of our responses to these complaints. Also, a lot of those complaints involve noise, like barking dog type calls throughout the city. So when you see the whole city map, they're not just from music, they're from other sources, like say animals, the dumpsters, quite a bit from the dumpster, especially in that West Raleigh side of the city. So more specifically about enforcement, Captain Van Antwerp, if you can come up with your team, and we'll get into details of how we are responding to some of these complaints, more specifically in the downtown corridor. Captain.
Thank you, Chief, Mayor, Council, and thank you, residents and business owners for being here as well. My name is Matt Van Antwerp. I am the Downtown Transit and Hospitality Commander, newly appointed by the Chief in this role. And what I can tell you is that the noise problem in the city is an ill-structured problem. I think we can see that being here today. We have a lot of intelligent people in the room, and this is a bit of a knot to untie because we are trying to, as the police department and surely as the council and the rest of the folks in this room, we are trying to strike a balance between what seems reasonable, which can clearly be a bit subjective, I think we recognize, and what is unreasonable. And so
From an enforcement standpoint, I can tell you just broadly from high level that under sort of the SVHC, Safe, Vibrant, Healthy Communities, the priority in downtown Raleigh, as well as a priority in the police department itself, is safety. And in our hospitality corridor, which is there in the Glenwood South area, but also encompasses some areas downtown Raleigh like Fayetteville Street, where we also have nightlife, like our Five Points neighbors who are having some concerns about nightlife there, that the priority is safety. And just in the calendar period in 2024, from January 1st to January 31st, the hospitality teams, one of which is headed by Sergeant Falco, who's here with me today, just those two teams, 4 officers apiece with 1 sergeant per team, seized 327 firearms in our hospitality areas that were unlawfully possessed. And so when we look at the totality of all of the circumstances and what kind of safety issues we have, certainly we have to triage those scenarios, and that becomes the most important. We've not had one single offense where someone was assaulted with a firearm during that same calendar period in that area. And so thank you, Councilwoman Jones. I give them a round of applause as well, because I'm really proud of the fact that, like my Nana used to say, you never know what you prevent, only what you didn't. And it doesn't have to be really a far stretch philosophically to understand that what we are preventing by taking those firearms out of the hands of sometimes convicted felons, alongside of illicit drugs, dangerous drugs, and the like, we're really making a huge difference where that is concerned. As far as noise is concerned, we have sort of ridden this wave with the community of recognizing how we're going to enforce it, how we're going to partner with our community members and our business members, business owners, so that we are being a good partner to all of those parties. And that takes something in order for us to do it and execute it without complaint from both sides. And I think we've gotten high marks there as well, just based upon the fact that we have tried to operate with empathy and reasonableness. Sergeant Falco's teams are saddled with all of those types of violations, whether it be the firearms violations, the noise violations. And what I really want to be certain that we don't do is that we don't take our eye off the prize of what is really important in our hospitality districts and in downtown Raleigh in general, long enough for something terrible to happen while our eye is off the ball, if that makes sense. And I appreciate the head shakes. That's really what I'm hoping that we can leave with. Chief?
I just want to highlight, go into more of the enforcement piece, and I'm going to use the January 1 of 2024 as a start date to current day. There's been 49 citations issued, and Sergeant Falco will come up and correct me if I get the numbers backwards here. I believe 20 of those have been civil and 29 have been criminal, or do I have that backwards, Sarge?
That's correct, Chief.
Okay, so I know that's a number that needed to be shared. So there has been some enforcement in this area. Obviously, we try to get voluntary compliance, but I'm sympathetic to the owners or whatever. They want something done. We have taken some enforcement. I don't want it to seem like we haven't done anything, that we go and nothing is done. So in just over a year, that's our enforcement numbers, 20 and 29. And like I say, I believe a lot more could be done on our part for as, like say, just enforcing this. But I don't want, I want to use it as a last resort. Councilmember Jones, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you. I love this conversation because it's not about pointing fingers in no way, because what you do for the community is phenomenal. And so I just first want to say that this is not a hit on RPD at all, because you do. And I really appreciate you breaking that down. You know, this is our highest priority, and that's the fact that we've taken hundreds of guns off the street. That's everybody's here priority, everyone here. I don't think anyone would choose to say, oh, no, come handle this noise complaint instead. And that's why this conversation is so important to have in the public, so that we can really level set and understand because at the end of the day, we want to be understanding. I do also appreciate highlighting that. I want to go back to the trash, the garbage truck. I was really shocked to see that it was one complaint on here about trash pickup, because I can show you many more just that I've gotten, and that I know have been submitted. And so it's this weird thing, that balance that we're in, whereas council, I think RPD is doing everything they can. Residents have experienced as much as they can, and now it's the guidance from us. What does mixed use look like? What does this, and how do we balance the growth and the vibrancy with quality of life of residents? And that's the really hard thing, the part of the decision that we have to make. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for your comments. And I am interested in hearing a little bit more before we end about what things we can do for the trash pickup, because I know, City Attorney, that we had talked about that, the possibilities of things that we can move forward with, if that can be the first quick win as we do. So thank you.
Okay.
So real quick before we get to the trash, because I want to try to get the social piece and the noise part, some direction as far as next steps and where we are. Are there any recommendations? I know there are some things that were mentioned here, alternative code, but then there's additional costs we got to think about. I know I mentioned the sound engineering. Is there anything else from other counselors as ideas? Because what I'm thinking is, we provide this, staff is still going to look at the social report, bring this back probably in August after our break to give them time, because it's only been a week since they got the report. And so that way when we come back, we can have something that's actionable that we can recommend to the full council.
Well, I appreciate you kind of asking for guidance here. I guess one of the points would be, does this council, and I know Councilor Harrison is sitting back there too, which is great, do we think this is incremental, or do we really think it is more of a paradigm shift? I'm curious to hear, because my opinion might be different than y'all's, and then I'd also love to see, if there is a proposal, even when you hear this 327 guns taken off the streets, and I am grateful for that as well. And we've had 14 homicides this year, right? We don't want any more. I mean, I'd like to see the fiscal impact and the personnel impact if we did create a more administrative unit, so that the police aren't chasing down garbage trucks at 5 a.m., which does not seem like the highest and best use of your very skilled officers. Or, the sound without. So I'd like to see, some sort of proposal that is more paradigm shifting and moves this out, saves time, gives, but exactly where that would be administered, under which ACM. Of course, we're sitting here with Assistant City Manager Bergman here, but what would that look like? And then in terms of time, I definitely understand that it takes some time to get this, particularly because it's a multi-jurisdictional issue, but I also know summer's the worst time for all of this, and that I don't want this to float or be too, it'd be nice to have a hard deadline of something, which maybe early August is reasonable, but I just want to keep the pressure up and some intensity on this effort, because things could have a tendency to. Right.
The reason why I mentioned the August piece, because then we're looking at June 24th.
Yeah, 2 months.
Where staff would be coming back, and we don't meet in July. And I don't know if that's enough time for staff to come back with what we're going to, I had a feeling in my brain, going to ask of them to deliver.
I agree with allowing time for staff. I think it's a phased problem, and I feel, my personal feeling is that trash pickup could be the first one that can be done first, rather than solving it all at one time. I think there are variations and phases of the implementation of whatever is going to come out of this. But I know that if I have residents who have to deal with trash pickup, whether it's on Ed Drive or if it's in 5 Points, I think that would be very appreciated to get that as soon as possible, which seems like the low-hanging fruit. Whereas creating an entire unit to help the police is, of course, a much longer trajectory. But I don't want to wait for the trash in order to fully implement that new unit. So I think we can do multiple things in a time frame.
I would like to prioritize both the outdoor amplified noise and the trucks as the first, not pushing away and anything about dogs barking. To me, I just want to focus on what is priority first. And to me, that's amplified music and the truck pickup of trash. To me, I think we should be able to do both in that time frame. Clearly, what I'd like to add to the table is not possible. And I would like Pat Young to kind of check the record, but I believe even the Paramount is stick-built. It may be steel, but concrete, anything that's 6 stories is going to be stick-built.
Right.
Once you go to concrete, you go to about 12 stories because it doesn't pay to go another floor. So stick-built means it's built with studs, either wood or metal, and then it is sheathed, and then it is cladded with, could be brick, but in terms of the actual structure itself, a concrete building, all the columns and floors that you see in high-rise commercial, that is a masonry. We rarely see that unless you're going above 12 stories. And so it's not going to happen. It's just the cost isn't there. That is something that I was concerned about back when we knew we were going to go mixed use, but the market wasn't there. We just couldn't build that way. And so I think that is something that I want to focus on. The other side is how do we control the source and figure out whether what Pat said, we're looking at an alternative building code, start dealing with the source, either internal or watch the permitting of outdoor events on the external. So that's my thinking, because we want to be known as a city where people can have fun. Generationally, we have from alpha up to boomers, and they all want to enjoy a great experience. So I want to strike that balance.
Schoenfeld said that the July 1st to June 30th is for permits. So I understand that's different than noise, but if there is anything that we need to act on in terms of permits where maybe there's been issues at certain establishments, if we are renewing those on July 1st, we have a month to figure out if there's any actions that need to be taken there.
So that leads me to, I know our city attorney is going to talk to us about the trash piece, but real quick, Whitney, as far as the permitting, I know that's on the nightlife, but as far as venues that we have had noise complaint issues, is that part of the application process for nightlife?
I'm gonna maybe phone Dottie. I believe that we did incorporate that into the nightlife permit ordinance this time, so that we would look at noise complaints and RPD can weigh in.
Any house, your thoughts based on that information? Because what I'm thinking is we can probably, I'm trying to look at an actionable item that we can give staff, even if we come back in June 24th, just for that, for them to look into in order to meet that July 1 application period.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we could come back in June, I mean, I did just on that map, seeing 38 nightlife permits basically on one street is an incredibly dense, right, set of permits, with downtown having 13. So there's just nothing comparable to what's happening on this street. And if, July 1st is the date, then.
So I'm going to lean to our city attorney's office. Any thoughts on any actionable items to address the noise and application process in 34 days? No pressure.
We will certainly take a look at we're still going through the report as well. And we can certainly do our best to have something to report out when you come back to your meeting in June. I am prepared to talk about what I'm terming dumpster noise.
Please go ahead.
Chastity, I think I had a chart. Can you put that up for me? What we did was, in response to this issue, our ordinance currently does not have a specific time. We surveyed other cities in North Carolina, which are the ones that we could find in the chart, you'll see that most of them have some type of time stipulation. Generally, I think with the earliest being 6 a.m. During the week and 7 a.m. on the weekend. If that's something that you would like for us to explore in terms of amending our ordinance, we can certainly look at doing that.
Okay.
One of the things that we didn't specifically look at, but certainly would be a part of this, is what is the enforcement mechanism? So we have this time, but when people violate the time, what does that look like? Is it just a civil citation, and what that amount is? And so if this is the interest of the committee, then we can certainly go back and also look at what would be the enforcement mechanism associated with any type of ordinance amendment.
Counselors, thoughts?
I like it, and I would say maybe citations, focusing on first, and what that, if any other cities do that, and what that citation looks like, so that, again, we're not turning it all again to police having to come out and all that, and wanting to make it a financial impact.
Well, I know, as many of you know, I spent 21 years in Fayetteville, and at one point actually lived in the area that backed up to a dumpster, and they came at 5 a.m. As a part of, that's a violation of the ordinance, so we started out, they had a graduated fee. So we started out with a warning, and a lot of times what you find is it's somewhat a challenge to actually get to that corporate office. And until you actually get to the corporate office and speak to someone, a lot of times you don't really get any response until you get to that point. And so we started out with the warning and then a civil citation, and they increased in amount. But generally what we found is once we get to that corporate office, that generally has some impact. We had an issue earlier this year, Councilmember Jones, I think that's Pratt Industries is in your district. They were constantly, neighbors were complaining about the noise that they were making. And once the police department made contact with the corporate office, those complaints seemed to, were actually eliminated as far as I know. But certainly, if you want us to look at that, we can look at that and look at what that civil citation might look like and bring that back.
Councilman Silver.
Yeah, I'm looking, well, thank you first for the matrix. And working in Fayetteville, I realize a lot of these commercial trash collectors do it only overnight. Is this an industry standard of why they're doing it overnight? Most municipal sanitation services operate during the day. So I'm just wondering, is it to avoid a conflict with municipal services? I'm just trying to understand, why is it done? Do they want the parking lots more clear? I'm just trying to understand, why is it a practice that it must be overnight? And I see here how you're limiting it, so it seems like they had to comply. So I'm just trying to understand, why is there a practice, if you have any knowledge of the industry focuses on overnight?
Well, I think it's a number of things. I do think it is the ability to get to the dumpster effectively, particularly when you're in a commercial establishment. You usually have parking. That parking is also competing with dumpster location. I think also it's a matter of customers. I've got a number of customers, and so in order to service these accounts, I've got to get started at 3 a.m. in the morning, those type of things. But obviously, having an ordinance, I think that in my experience, most people want to be good neighbors.
I just want to make sure I do support looking very closely at the hours and however works with the violation. I just want to make sure by forcing different hours, there aren't some other implications that are unforeseen that will surface, just as you're saying, we can't get into service to trash because there are vehicles in the way. they have to figure out where to put the dumpster. So I just want to make sure we think through, if we go that route, that we just think about the implications so that we now have buildings that cannot be serviced because the vehicles can't get in there to get access to the carts.
Right, and then you have issues with uncollected dumpsters. So, yes.
Okay. So if we could, I would say definitely look at that, but also you said something about reaching corporate office, and the complaint we have was dealing with the RETS facilities. If we could reach out to the government affairs, I know their CEO keeps changing, but if we can reach out to the government affairs person at RETS, I actually have our contact information if needed, and make them aware of this issue and see if something that they can do to address that concern immediately. I think that'd be helpful, because the part we're asking you as far as looking at ordinance, look at penalties and everything else, by the time we report that out and the council gives you permission to work on it, probably as soon as you have it wouldn't be August or September. That's because you've dealt with this before. But if we can deal with that issue probably sooner than later, that may be helpful as we go from there. Any other comments, thoughts? All right. So with that said, my first question is, does staff have direction that it needs to move forward? I see us coming back June 24th to look at the NORS ordinance, any modifications, updates that we can make in relation to the nightlife permit. But I think also looking at the trash pickup and owners, the information we mentioned, but also the outdoor noise amplification. I don't know what that looks like, but I know Councilor Silver, you mentioned the outdoor noise, trying to bring that back June 24th. So what does that?
Oh, I was going with the August, but if they can do June 24th,
So,
I just want to give staff enough time.
Yeah, staff, what for that one, how much time do you?
Specifically to that one, I'll probably have to ask Whitney, but overall, I would try to treat June almost as a progress update if you're having a committee meeting anyway to talk about that one, and treat August at least as some of the recommendations and things like that would come from the work that Whitney does with all of the departments.
I'll just add that even though the nightlife permits run from July 1 to June 30th, renewal season begins June 1st, so in a couple days. But
So
again,
Monday, Sunday.
Yes.
Okay.
But in the nightlife permit ordinance now, we can look at a repeat of violations of the noise ordinance, which could prevent someone from getting their nightlife permit. And again, regardless of whether or not they have a nightlife permit, just for the public as well, they should still be abiding by the noise ordinance.
Okay. So I'm going to ask this of the committee, since I know it seems like our August meeting will probably be a lot meatier on this topic. June 24th will probably be more of an update. Is that?
Yeah, an
fair to say?
update on that referral plus whatever we're doing on the commercial trash pickup.
Okay. So what I would like to do is, we have our digital sign it. We'll keep that in August. I won't move it. We'll leave it. I just thought about something else. So we'll keep that in August for now. I was trying to balance these items on the agenda. So I think where we are now, City Attorney's Office, do you have the direction you need as far? So the City Attorney's Office will look into this information here as far as trash pickups and policies, bring that back to us on the 24th of June. So at this time, all items will remain pending in our committee. All right. Any other items, any other comments? Thank you all for coming out. We'll be back here on June 24th, 11:30 here in this chamber. Take care.
Thank you.